2025 has been a year of many losses to me personally and to the Sacramento community. We've lost several well-known radio people this year, and it's only July. Just last month, um, Chris Collins passed away at age 64 on June 17th. He had been hospitalized, and apparently there were complications, and he kind of died unexpectedly. And then in '80, Chris Collins came from, like I did, the roller rink industry as a DJ, and came to radio, and began a pretty long career. And so by 1984, when I started at Quad 106.5, he was doing the morning show at FM 102. And at the time, Rick Gillette was the program director, and they were like a team because Chris was his assistant. And so Chris not only was part of the top morning show in town, he was, and very entertaining at it. I would listen to his show. I would listen to our morning show as well, Masters and Johnson, but usually when I got off the air, I needed to listen to the Morning Zoo first. And the Morning Zoo, he stayed with it until the end of 1990, and then moved on to actually bigger things. But right now I want to pay tribute to Chris with some footage that I did back in 2012 with him. We did an interview series about his time at FM 102.
Well, from a competitive standpoint, my attitude was if the competition of Quad would do 3 things, I'd do 5. And I'm not saying that's right, wrong, or indifferent. It was just my mentality. And it's why in the morning show, I kept people like Killer B. He stayed with me, and I kept some, but I burned others and turned them out because they always thought there was an easier way of being successful. And I told them, look, there's no other way of being successful. If you don't outwork your opponents, okay, you're going to lose. But if you're here because you want to hold hands and get drunk every night with your buddies and live in the station and have your friends for the next 20 years, you're in the wrong business. It's never going to work that way. This is fight to the death. This is a war, okay? And when you become irrelevant in this war, you're going to be replaced by somebody cheaper. So you take advantage of what you can. You dominate as long as you can. You attack and attack and attack until they take the ball away from you. So we looked at Quad. Quad was the legitimate competitor. Ed Lambert was a great jock. Jeff Hunter worked there for a while. Jeff had success as a top 40 guy. You worked in that group. There were guys that could broadcast, okay?
One of the reasons why I think about you as one of the top radio people ever that I've known
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Is honestly because, you were number one for so long. Do you think it was the artist that drove the format, or was it other things?
I think artists helped, but I think it was the arrogance and audacity of Gillette and I together that we were going to do what we had to do to win. FM 102 was built on street presence because our owners wouldn't spend money. But you can't have that converted to ratings if you don't connect with the audience. And I think that's what made me ultimately a very, very good morning guy. In 1982, Thriller came out. And Thriller completely changed pop radio.
I agree with that.
People have no idea, but I remember as a kid, my sister's 8 years older than me, my brother's 6, and when what's the Beatle album?
Sgt.
Pepper's came out. Rock radio began.
Right.
It did.
It's
FM.
a great time marker for that.
It was the whole entire radio industry.
Donahue and all that started right when Sgt. Pepper
KMPX in San Francisco. I remember my sister used to listen to it. It was in mono. Okay, and I remember listening to Tom and and everyone else, Desiree, and everybody that was there. The same thing happened with Thriller. When that record came out, there had never been a record ever produced like that. It had
Quincy
smooth
Jones.
Jazz. Yeah, it had everything that you would want in something that had never been heard in pop music. There was a
Beat It had rock in it.
Of course, it was a triangulation of everything. It had jazz, smooth jazz. It had ballads. It had Eddie Van Halen. Like you said, it had
McCartney.
Of course, it had everything. So that changed.
You're right. That was a groundbreaking album.
Okay, as it is, I think my last salary base when I left KSFM It was 150 grand base. I probably made 300 grand my last year, which is a lot of money.
That was probably the highest in town.
Well, it was then, but I mean, in the 90s then, all the guys made money. Okay,
Right.
They made 500-600 grand a year, but I was making 100 grand in 1985. So, there was a lot of money back then. Nobody was. Like, I helped Dave Williams and Joey get their first 6-figure contracts there, which they rightfully earned.
Wow.
And they were two of my mentors. I mean, I love Dave Williams. I think he's probably the greatest news talk man I've ever heard. And I'm happy he's working again. And
he was number one on KFBK for many years.
Great broadcaster.
About Dave Williams. He and I went to the same high school together.
Really?
Highlands High.
Highlands High, yeah.
And Bob
Here in
Nathan,
town.
I
Here in
got to
town,
work
yeah.
with as well. Bob was a brilliant broadcaster. He's so smart. Anyway.
FM 102 had an amazing track record as far as programming and getting great ratings. I mean, it was number one just almost all the time throughout the 80s. Tell me about it, starting with Gillette. What was the secret to FM 102 transforming from the music FM, whatever that was, to FM 102, which was basically the Valley's number one?
A lot of FM 102's success were that Gillette and I were two peas in a pod. We were both ultra hyper, ultra focused, ultra passionate about what we did. And Gillette grew up in Bakersfield when it was a bedroom community of LA, even though we know that it's not really a bedroom community of LA, but it was. Radio at night boomed into Bakersfield. For me, I grew up in Santa Clara when it was 18,000. My grandfather was the first mayor of Santa Clara. My great-grandfather founded Santa Clara.
Wow.
So
what was his name?
My great-grandfather was Robert Roll, and my grandfather was Robert B. Roll. So Santa Clara, same thing. KFRC was a major influence. KSFO was a major influence to me, and then KSAN, of course, was a major influence to me. So I think keeping that in mind, Gillette had the influences of KHJ, KFWB. I mean, he had that top 40 breeding put into him. Plus, Bakersfield was a great top 40 market. Okay, during his growing up, they had great broadcasters there. Kathy was a great radio station. It battled another station. Same in the Bay Area. KLIB was the San Jose station that battled for supremacy of San Jose and tried to block KYA and KFRC out. So I think that had a part with it. Okay, and then other people may say, "What does that got to do with Sacramento?" It has everything to do with it. Okay, so when the two ships met, I mean, Gillette and I rarely had to discuss anything. We knew exactly where we were going, what had to be done in the marketplace, and it was real simple. Gillette led. Gillette, he inspired people. Because he was passionate, but he didn't get too far out of bounds either way, or I'd smack him back, and whatever he didn't lead with, I led with. So he smacked me back. So there was an understanding. I never usurped his authority. So the programming of it, Gillette and I had this belief that, Michael Jackson, Prince a couple of years earlier.
1999.
Of course, everything had changed, right? I mean, top 40 radio wasn't being done right, and the other key was that AM radio was dying a slow, painful death.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't throw everything at the wall, but, he and I also felt that the market would succeed in a urban sense, very much more urban than it would white. And with KZAP...
In other words, a hybrid of CHR and urban.
Correct. Yeah. And with KZAP doing the Superstars format, there was no really reason... Whereas in the 70s, Croy could play Bachman Turner Overdrive into Bad Company, into the Spinners, into Pilot out of Australia, into Dionne Warwick. That wasn't going to work in the 80s with everything that had been sort of pigeonholed. So we were right. We guessed right. I also had...
Also, just a little footnote, you and I share a little bit of history. We both came from roller rinks.
Yeah.
We were roller rink DJs.
Yeah.
Do you think that had any impact?
Of course it did. I was at 14, I was a roller rink DJ because I was doing regular radio. It has a big thing because at that time, rinks were... they were like what a record store would be. You were either going into record stores to walk around and listen to what Tower... or the record factory, or the record plant, or whatever, or the warehouse was playing in the store, or you were at a rink, and you were skating and you were listening to music. So there was a street vibe to that. Okay, that now rave.
There was a flow to music too.
Of course,
yeah.
Now you have raves. Okay, if you want to get into the techno side of it, hip hop, you have house parties. I mean, and obviously I'm making this a little bit. I don't want to say granular, but I mean it's. it's not as simple as that, but it is as simple as that, is what I'm saying.
It's about culture.
Yeah, and that was the other thing.
Dance culture, I guess.
Well, that was the other thing that we did. I mean, I had a vibe for the street there, and I knew that we hadn't done radio right since I had been there from March of '80, that we hadn't grown with the times. So we hit it. I mean, we blew that station up. I'll never forget June 1. We took off horrible music. And so there were artists that we were taking chances on, and we were driving this format, which is now, a lot of formats. So it was an interesting time in all of this, right? But back in the day, you play the right records, you're in people's faces, you work first to the audience, and then you come back to everything else. There was no way you weren't going to win, and big, which we did.
The Morning Zoo, a number one show for many years. What was the Morning Zoo more about talk or music?
It was a mix. I knew I had limits. I knew that I could push hard, and I knew that if I wanted to make impact, I had to be a bit more controversial and cutting edge, which, I mean, we were way ahead of Stern and everybody. I mean, we were completely out in right field in this area, and it was successful. And I knew that as long as I met Gillette's needs, which were 6 records an hour. You can throw in a WoW record, which for me was a Motown record, because I was programming as well. And people forget that I had all the success, but I was also the ops program music director, so I understood what I was doing as well. I knew how to push one to pull on the other and vice versa. Yeah, I mean, as long as we met that criteria, I thought we would have success, and we ultimately did.
Real quickly, how would you compare your programming in the 80s with what jocks did at like Earth Radio in the 70s?
I had a lot of comparisons. My background was freeform album rock radio. I grew up in a family that my sister listened to KMPX. My brother did. My brother was into Neil Young and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. My sister was into the Stones, and then went into, Dan Hicks, and went into the Flying Burrito Brothers. And, I grew up with Terry McGovern as a morning guy at KSAN, Don Rose, who was my ultimate idol at KFRC, and Don Sherwood at KSFO when I was a kid, because my dad and mom loved him. So, yeah, it had a lot to do with it all as one. Freeform, I think, is the reason why Top 40 Radio worked eventually.
So after Chris left FM 102 in late 1990, he went on to do other things, exciting things like in the hockey world and the sports world. He did play-by-play for the San Jose Sharks and other things, radio ownership. But here's a little bit of what he did after leaving FM 102.
I did my part. I was working at that time in the National Hockey League full-time with the San Jose Sharks as a broadcaster. I was also the head of operations and part owner of KDIA in Oakland. I helped resurface that station as the Soldies format, which I basically founded myself.
So that was Chris Collins. What a fun time we had during those interviews we did back in March of 20. It was actually March 31st. 2012. He came over to my place, and we just spent the whole day making videos. And he just, I had known him before that. We met, actually, we didn't really know each other that well. We knew each other, more of each other, from reading about each other in trade magazines and stuff like that, and from knowing people in common, like people at Quad that I knew, he knew, and people at FM 102 that I knew and he knew. We just, we were part of a community that knew each other. And when we did those interviews, it was kind of like the first time we really sat down and talked with each other for a long time. Before that, I met him at a high school football game back in the 80s. Back when I was doing the overnight shift and he was doing mornings, and I don't even know if he remembered that, but I knew a lot about him because he had worked in the roller rink business, so did I, and we followed similar paths, although I would say he went further as far as like morning show notoriety, very famous as a morning show host, and then moving on to the sports world. So anyway, Chris Collins made a big contribution to the Sacramento radio scene, and he also helped local artists. He helped, Club Nouveau get their early airplay, as Quad did too. And Club Nouveau was, the first recording artist in history from Sacramento to have a #1 single in the United States. So both of us helped the music scene, and both of us were very much in tune with our listeners, and so that was his contribution. He just knew how to entertain a community, and he will be missed. And I believe partly because he made a lot of recordings of his shows. People are going to hear it for a long time and think of him as one of Sacramento's all-time leading talent.